Welcome to another edition of Right Voices. I'm John Hart, the co-founder of C3 Solutions and the editor of our news magazine, C3. Today, we're honored to be joined by Congressman Jeff Duncan, who's represented South Carolina's 3rd Congressional District since 2011. He serves on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, where he chairs the Energy, Climate, and Grid Security Subcommittee. He's also a member of the House Conservative Climate Caucus. Congressman, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
John, thanks for having me.
So tell us about your district and South Carolina. So I worked for Jim DeMint for a few years. I was on the Hill for about 15 years. But describe kind of your district and how members have responded to you being in a caucus that links these words conservative and climate together. That's sometimes a record scratch for conservatives, as you probably know. Why did you decide to join this caucus?
Yeah, so my district in South Carolina is one of the most conservative in the country. It's the northwest corner, comprises about 11 counties, very, very Republican counties. And President Trump just did a rally there last fall up in Pickens County. And so he recognized the conservative nature of the county and the district. Very conservative. I believe in American energy independence. I believe that there is a big push by outside groups, this administration, others on climate. And whatever position you take on climate, we should be able, as conservatives, approach it in a way that supports American energy being cleaner, more affordable, more reliable. And that's one thing we worked on in the subcommittee, is just how can we help Americans have cleaner, affordable, and reliable electricity and other energy sources. As chair of energy subcommittee, I looked at energy in two very broad categories. You have transportation fuels, that's the gasoline, the diesel fuel, even electricity for transportation. And then you have baseload generation, or what utilities put out. So that's all of your solar, wind, that's your nuclear, coal, natural gas, hydro, that produces the electricity. So we have to look at it in those broad categories and also make sure that at the end of the day, Americans have affordable transportation fuels, that our trucking industry has affordable transportation fuels, but we also have affordable electricity that's always on, reliable, and hopefully cleaner. And so in America, we have natural gas, and it burns 40% cleaner than any other gas produced in the world. It can be exported, and we have so much gas in this country that now we can't really accurately measure the amount of natural gas the United States of America has. We have plenty for our own utilization for hundreds of years, and we have plenty to export to help others clean up their environment and burn cleaner burning U.S. produced natural gas.
Yeah, you may have seen one of the reports that we put out is called Free Economies or Clean Economies. And what we did is we looked at all of the economies of the world and did an overlay of the Heritage Index of Economic Freedom with the Yale Environmental Performance Index. We showed that the free economies are twice as clean as the less free. So that's a common sense notion that most conservatives, I think, understand. Voters understand that. Why is it so hard to get for some of your colleagues on the left to accept that if you want to have a cleaner economy, you need to have more economic freedom, you need to have more energy and not less?
Yeah, well, energy is the foundation of everything. And the prices my constituents and Americans are paying at the grocery store for the basic commodities they use, paying for transportation fuels to take their children to school, go to work, or go to their house of worship. Everything they buy at retail outlets has an energy component that's factored in. But trucking companies aren't going to eat the transportation fuels. They're going to pass that on, and that increases the price at the grocery store or the retailer, and that is inflationary. So what we're trying to do is lower costs for all Americans across all boards and understanding that energy component. And we are doing it much cleaner in this country through U.S. produced natural gas, primarily bringing more nuclear online, I hope, in the future. And because nuclear power is carbon free, and it produces a tremendous amount of baseload energy. We're really focused on our committee on nuclear power. I have the Atomic Energy Advancement Act. The Senate has the Advance Act. They're very, very close together. We have a four corners agreement to try to get it done in this Congress. That's both the ranking member and the chairwoman of Energy and Commerce, and then their counterparts in the Senate, and leadership to really try to get that bill done, to really get the Nuclear Regulatory Commission into the 21st century and focus on what the future looks like and this energy nuclear renaissance that I think we're going to experience. And that's micro reactors, small modular reactors, advanced technology, reprocessing, recycling spent fuel so we can deal with the waste stream and get more energy out of the existing energy rods that we have. So there's just a lot of things within that space. And it points to the fact that we can do it cleaner, we can do it more reliable, and we can make it affordable.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit more about that bill. That's a very important piece of legislation that's moving. There's so much bad news about what's happening in Congress, but there's a lot of really good things moving, particularly in the energy space. So describe more in detail, what is the bill, what problem does that bill solve? And
Well,
how
it's
going to make it?
yeah, it's a multifaceted generational atomic energy bill. We haven't addressed this at this level with these kind of reforms in a generation. And so at least in the last decade or more, and I've been in Congress 14 years and we haven't taken up something as robust as this. One big component was Price-Anderson, which was is the liability backstop for nuclear industry. And we were able to get that Price-Anderson language in the last minibus there. We passed a government funding bill. So we got that taken care of. And that really helps industry and investors that are looking at nuclear power and nuclear technology to have some sort of assurance that if, God forbid, something happened, that there is some sort of liability backstop and something we needed. Now, I'll give a shout out to Southern Power down at Plant Vogtle, bringing the two reactors online down there. The first time we've had reactors come online at about 30 plus years. So the fourth reactor will be generating commercial power probably by summertime. It's already running, but they have to test it. And then so we can point to the redundancies on the cooling systems and the technologies that were put in place after Fukushima. Now, the industry is really maturing. One thing we have to address, and we're trying to in Energy and Commerce, separate from the Atomic Energy Advancement Act, is just having a U.S. sourced, domestic sourced, enriched uranium fuel source for nuclear power. We import too much uranium, enriched uranium from Russia, and we should lessen our dependence on any foreign adversary for something so critical to energy production like uranium is, enriched uranium. So trying to do that more domestically and stand up an enriched uranium manufacturing process in this country is important. Then we also have to have workforce at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, because people that understand nuclear are a very hot commodity out there in industry. And so a lot of the expertise and talent that's at the NRC gets hired away. And what happens is that slows down the process for permitting at the NRC for whether it's relicensing or for new permits going forward. And so we need to make sure they have a workforce. Workforce development is part of this bill. And so I could go through the whole idea of just creating a nuclear leadership component for this nation to once again lead in the nuclear space. We shouldn't be behind Russia or China or any other country in the nuclear expertise and technology and leadership. We should be the leader. And so it's really trying to move the nation forward to get ready for this renaissance that I think we're going to experience.
Yeah, and Congressman, an issue that you know very, very well, but a lot of voters don't understand is really the extent to which we have an energy shortage coming up with new data centers, AI technology. Describe how nuclear is going to help meet those incredible demands on energy that are all just almost.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, there's going to be an energy shortage for a lot of reasons. The increased amount of renewables that are out there, they're intermittent, they're weather dependent or climate dependent, whether it's solar with the sun not shining, cloudy and climatic events there, wind not blowing. And they'll be part of our mix. And I like renewables, but they're not dispatchable. They're not ready when you need it. And that's what dispatchable energy is, that you can ramp it up or down to meet the demands. And so one thing that nuclear small modular reactors, that is part of the technology we're working on here, which are small modularized reactors that can be built in a manufacturing facility and then put together on site. And these are 40 to 100 megawatt processes, and you can stack them together. So if you have a manufacturing industrial complex, you could have an SMR provide the power for that, or for a data center that you mentioned that is a huge draw on power. They can set a microreactor or SMR up just to run power for that facility. Or if they need more, they can stack them together and produce more power. So, that on-site power delivery, I think, is a facet of the wave of the future versus relying on a huge nuclear power station or a gas-fired generating station to provide power and transmit that power, or from wind and solar to have that power transmitted. They can do it on site, and they can add to it to meet the demands if the demands increase.
And what is the acreage footprint of some of the newer small modular reactors? In other words, how
Oh,
much?
it's small. It's 5 acres or so. It doesn't have to be huge versus these, 100 acres of property that is required for a traditional nuclear power plant, buffer zone, and then you have to be by a water source for your coolant, and you have to draw from a lake or river or the ocean for your coolant. These reactors don't have to have that. They've got an internal cooling system that is also redundant, so it's got a backup system there as well. Some of them are considered walkaway safe, and that they will put themselves out should something overheat. So smaller footprint, stackable power to meet your energy needs, portability of the units. It just seems like a win-win, and we're ready, as well as the rest of the world are ready for that technology to come online and be proven, and then be permitted by the regulatory authorities.
And where's the Biden administration on this particular bill? Are they, if you get this to the president's desk, are you confident he'll sign it?
So our bill, the Atomic Energy Advancement Act, was bipartisan. It had 387 votes in the House out of 435, which I thought was tremendous. So, I believe it's bipartisan on the Senate side as well. And the Biden administration has been pro-nuclear. They haven't been as aggressive as I would think they would be, but we have some of the national labs at Idaho and Oak Ridge and of course in Savannah River Site that are working on the nuclear technologies that are needed, not only for these advanced reactors and test sites, but also for spent fuel reprocessing and recycling, so that we have a stable fuel source. We deal with the waste stream. I don't consider spent fuel sitting on sites around the country as waste. I consider it as an asset, because we can take that, recycle it, and then use it again and get 96% of the available energy in that fuel rod. Whereas right now we only get about 5% of the available energy in every fuel pellet or fuel rod in a nuclear reactor. France recycles, and France gets about 95 or 96% of the energy that's in that same fuel that we're using. We're getting 5%. So we really need to look at that, deal with the waste stream. But also at the end of the day, there's going to be an end of life waste component, whether it's defense waste, we call legacy waste here in Washington, that came out of the nuclear development program for our nuclear weapons, or commercial waste. Once the reprocessing is done, there's going to be some components that have to go into a long-term repository. So our nation has got to address things like Yucca Mountain, or what the nation decides to do with nuclear waste at the end of life.
Right. So and as we ramp up the nuclear capacity and build this ability to deliver this energy, at the same time, we're sitting on incredible reserves of natural gas. And you've been very critical of the Biden administration's pause on liquefied natural gas exports. Describe your perspective on that.
Well, I think the Biden LNG export pause, they call it, and they did it through a press release, not even an executive order or congressional action. I think it was misguided, because we have so many friends and allies around the world that want U.S. produced cleaner burning natural gas, whether it's the folks in Eastern Europe that are facing the Russian war in Ukraine, or whether it's places that want to convert coal-fired power plants to natural gas because it's cleaner burning, or to improve standard of living in places that are where you have energy poverty. The U.S. can do it with our natural gas, and we have an abundance of natural gas in this country. We can meet all of our demands and have plenty to export to help our friends and allies around the globe, and it will also help them lower their global carbon emissions. And but there's some caveats in what we need to do. In order to export, you're going to have to build pipelines to the new export terminals. So we have a huge infrastructure need in this country to deliver those resources to the export terminals, to the utilities that need them to produce electricity here at home. So I think about energy in four main components: produce the resources that we have here, and that's places like Permian Basin or the Marcellus Shale. And then we have to deliver those. Pipelines, the safest way to deliver those resources, whether it's liquid fuel or natural gas, deliver those resources to where they can be utilized by the utilities to produce electricity or utilized by the refineries to produce the transportation fuels and other components that we need, and then also export. So LNG export is important. And then we see the Biden administration put a pause on these future permits. Well, these projects just don't spring out of the ground overnight. It takes years and years of attracting investment, lining up contracts for the purchase of the gas, the actual construction of the facility, and bringing it online before you ever export that first molecule of gas. And so this pause has actually disrupted the financial markets. It's disrupted the future potential there. And I think it's going to have a long-term effect on future LNG export. It's going to be a delay, and that hurts our friends and allies who are counting on the United States to deliver more natural gas.
Yeah, and Congressman, let's talk briefly about the situation in the Middle East. It seems that sometimes those on the left who are the most they say they're the most concerned about climate tend to be the quickest to want to appease countries like Iran. Can you describe the climate risks of appeasement?
Yeah, so appeasement's never worked. It didn't work in 1934, 36 when Chamberlain tried it. These bad actors, Iran is the largest state sponsor of terrorism. Russia provides a lot of components for terrorists to use, whether it's rockets or financing or other components. So what we need to do is stand with Israel because they are our number one ally in the Middle East. Stand with Israel and provide them the whatever need they have, whether it's components for military equipment or whether it's financing to help them build more of the David Sling and other rocket systems they used in the recent attack from Iran. And then we have to continue ramping up sanctions on Iran and really stopping their sale of natural gas and oil around the world, at least putting the sanctions on there to punish them so that they don't have the money available to provide the Houthis or others with the financing, the Hamas and Hezbollah, the financing they need to continue to attack our friends and allies and are a threat to the United States as far as terrorism goes. So right now in Congress, we're working on just that. We're working on an Israel aid package. We're working on a Ukrainian aid package. We're working on some other things that will help the government put sanctions on Iran. But we saw the Biden administration unfreeze Iranian assets, and I can't help but say that probably emboldened and empowered the Ayatollahs there. We saw the Obama administration give Iran a heck of a lot of money and pallets of cash that went to Tehran. So we should never appease, and we should definitely not aid and abet Iran, which we have seen this administration do. So hopefully the posture of Congress will be, we stand against Iran, we stand with Israel, and we absolutely stand against terrorism around the world.
And what is your outlook for those packages moving forward over the next few days?
I think Speaker Johnson has a tough fight on his hands with the packages and the way they're trying to craft these packages. And it looks like we're going to be here on Saturday night voting on these. I don't envy where he's at. We all want to try to help Israel, also want to try to help Ukraine, but we also know what we've given Ukraine. We know what historically Ukraine has done with some of the money with graft and corruption within that country, and not saying the current administration over there is doing that, but there needs to be the guardrails and protections because this is American money. This is money that's taken from the American taxpayer, the hardworking Americans that go to work every day and work hard to generate income that we tax. We should be very good stewards of that money, regardless of who we give it to, whether it's Israel or Ukraine. And so looking at the guardrails and trying to find a pay for. We gave a lot of money away in the Inflation Reduction Act. It's a misnomer, but because inflation went up and not down. But in the IRA, a lot of money was given or at least allocated by the administration and House Democrats and Senate Democrats that hadn't been spent. So I think we should claw back some of that money and use that as a pay for if we truly want to help Ukraine. And look, we're $34 trillion in debt. We're spending more money we're bringing in. I'm a fiscal conservative, and I believe we ought to try to pay for these things.
Well, my old boss, Tom Coburn, had a saying. He said, the best way to make something expensive is for Washington to make it affordable.
That's true.
In the Inflation Reduction Act, there's been a backlash to some of the technologies that you talk about. This all of the above energy posture, I think, is what most conservatives believe. But sometimes if you overly subsidize, you delay the deployment of technology when the market would have solved it anyway.
Yeah, I believe let the market unleash the innovative and entrepreneurial spirit that Americans have and let them solve some of these problems. We saw when when cash for clunkers happened and the Obama administration allowed government to create the system and it failed. The car dealers couldn't be paid for bringing in those clunkers and selling new cars. We saw it with Obamacare and a lot of money spent to set up an Obamacare system that continued to crash. And instead of going out and giving money to the private sector and tell them what you want, what the product is, put a deadline on it, let them innovate and let them create, that's a better system. That's how America works. I believe in free market capitalism and raising capital to do that, chase an idea, live the American dream. And that's what we should do. If we get government out of the way, more times than not, America will come roaring back and the innovators and entrepreneurs will find a way to do it.
That is true. That's the story of America. Was
Yeah.
is there anything we didn't ask about your committee work that you want to touch on that's not getting really the attention it deserves? Any other issues or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the issues of building out a pipeline infrastructure are very important. It's oftentimes not a groovy topic, but we need to build out pipeline infrastructure in this country to deliver the resources where they need to go, whether that's LNG exports, whether that's utilities. We need to address as a nation our refining capacity in this country for refining those products into the products that we use, those hydrocarbons. Nuclear is always going to be a big part of what we do is under my tenure because I believe in nuclear. I believe in this renaissance. And then, of course, CMR, the chairwoman, Kathy McMorris Rogers, is looking at data privacy, which protecting your privacy when you go online and the apps you use and social media aspects, protecting especially children and data privacy in general is important. But I don't know if we're going to get there because it's a very, very complicated subject when you get right down to it. And then something that's near and dear to my heart, our committee is trying to work on, and that's name, image, and likeness issues for the NCAA and college athletics, which we need to address. I've been working on this for 2 years, and NIL things are really changing the landscape of a sport that I love, and that's college football. And so these are issues where we have 50 different state laws addressing NIL. We need one national standard so that the coaches and recruiters and the athletes themselves can understand what they're dealing with when it comes to NIL.
Well, Congressman, thanks so much for your time. We're going to follow these issues very closely and hope to have you back on soon.
I hope so. Thank you so much. God bless.
Thanks.